Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this week's Euromoney Livestream, the first in our new Saudi series. This connected series of interviews, panel discussions, Q&A sessions, and more will run over the next 3 months and aims to give our international audience a clear view of the economic and financial developments in the Middle East's most important country, Saudi Arabia. I am Richard Banks, editor of Euromoney Livestreams, and I will be your host for this show. Our format today is a new one, a keynote interview followed by a live panel discussion with 2 expert analysts. Those same analysts will take questions from you, our online audience as well. Today, we are delighted to have as our special guest, His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Al-Jadaan, Minister of Finance and Acting Minister of Economy and Planning of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It's an honor and pleasure to welcome you, Minister.
Thank you very much.
It's a great pity that we can't be there in Riyadh with you in person, as we have been every year since 2006. And we're all looking forward to coming back just as soon as it's safe to do so. Also joining me today as my co-interviewer is my friend and colleague, Mariam Meskin. Mariam is Acting Emerging Markets Editor for Global Capital. So Mariam, welcome to you too.
Thank you.
Minister, how has the Saudi economy managed the challenges stemming from the pandemic so far?
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Mariam, and thank you for Euromoney for organizing this. And hopefully very soon we will see you in person and all the guests that you always bring, and we are proud to host.
Thank you.
Richard, I think 2020 has been arguably the most challenging year, possibly for the last 100 years. Not only economically or financially, but also humanly, where almost everybody around the world has been impacted. Global and Saudi economy obviously have started the year in a different tone. We did not really expect what we are seeing and living today. World have started 2020 with caution, but with some optimism. Fragile growth, trade and geopolitical tensions, but there was some optimism that growth is underway, and you could have seen this from the international organizations' reports. In Saudi Arabia, it was a little bit different. We ended the 2019 with very positive momentum. Vision 2030 started yielding results. We started seeing growth on non-oil economy. We started seeing significant growth actually on sectors that we were focusing on, and tourism, entertainment, sports, financial sector, technology, with growth throughout 2019 between 3 and 8%. So there was very good momentum where we started 2020. Also in 2020, we assumed the G20 presidency. And we have put together an agenda that is very powerful, aiming to take our role in working with leading the G20 and our partners in the G20 to support the growth, support sustainable, inclusive growth. Then, very quickly, COVID-19 hit, and it hit the world like a speed train. And the result was that, the economy went almost into hibernation due to the lockdown. That resulted in significant impact, and particularly actually on the most vulnerable, whether countries or individuals. That also caused significant impact on Saudi in addition, which is due to the COVID-19, due to the almost economic hibernation. Oil markets were impacted negatively. Revenues from the oil for Saudi Arabia dropped significantly. And obviously, you could see now the results. When countries have announced GDPs and various countries around the world dropped by 5, 10, 15, and some countries even 20%, which basically puts these countries back 10 years before to their GDP levels about 10 years ago, lost 10 years of GDP growth. But then the world responded, and the world leaders responded very quickly. And we have seen a response from the world that we have not seen ever. We have not seen even after the World War II or after the financial crisis in 2008. That support actually helped significantly to contain the pandemic with the focus on human lives, the livelihood of people, but also not losing an eyesight on the economy. In Saudi, over the past 4 or 5 years, when we started the Vision 2030, we started with a clear plan of diversifying our economy, making sure that we ensure that the volatility that the oil market brings to our plans and to our economy is controlled. We wanted to enable the private sector, we wanted to diversify the economy. But what was most important is we invested heavily on infrastructure. We invested in technology, not only investing in companies around the world, but we invested in our own technology infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. Little did we know how important this is going to be during this year. And very quickly, Saudi Arabia responded. Because of the reform that we have started a few years back, we had a government that is informed, that is very well coordinated, that is proactive, very quickly put together a plan to deal with protecting our people. And we redirected significant resources to the healthcare system. We almost doubled the number of beds, the number of ICU beds, the number of equipments available to ensure that we are able to deal with the pandemic, protect our people, which is very important. What is also important is that the Saudi government and the king decided very quickly that we are going to provide COVID-19 healthcare services free of charge, not only to the nationals, but also to the citizens and to the illegal citizens in Saudi Arabia. These were provided free of charge without any obligation and without any responsibility including on the illegal residents. Also, we started looking at the businesses, and we provided significant support to businesses. We provided a lot of support to the most hit with direct liquidity through grants. We provided significant amount of working capital where we Saudi Arabia and the government decided to waive our right to collect taxes and custom duties and government fees. So to give the businesses a breathing space to use their cash flow and working capital as they see fit to cover their costs. But also we went even more than that and started paying the wages of the private sector employees to ensure that they don't need to worry about the wages and to protect the jobs. On the other side, we looked at our fiscal space. We started the year with very strong fiscal buffers. Saudi Arabia is the largest economy in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia has significant wealth, significant investments, and significant reserves, both foreign reserves and local. We mobilized this, but we also mobilized our ability to tap the debt market. We increased the ceiling of debt to GDP from 30 to 50%. We went to the local markets, and I am very pleased really to say that in the local market, there has been a real depth which enabled us to raise significant amounts of government debt in the local market without impacting the liquidity. But also we went to the international markets and we were received very well by the investors. We engaged with the investors very quickly. We informed the investors of what is happening in Saudi Arabia and our plans, and that worked out actually brilliantly. On the other side, we also looked at what other revenues that we can generate. We also have investments with SAMA, we have investments with the PIF. We did not want to call on dividends by these two institutions unnecessarily. but we only called for what we really need to cover throughout the year. It is our plan to continue. We think the results are very positive. We opened the economy now, and we are seeing actually very positive signs. While the GStats numbers are not yet published for the second quarter, I could tell you, since we reopened the economy, now we are back actually in the offices, private sector, and government. Since we restarted, we are seeing actually very good signs. We reopened the tourism sector, taking all the health precautions, and that sector responded very positively. The numbers are showing growth year on year, not even during the crisis or during the pandemic lockdown and after, but actually year on year compared to last year. We are seeing growth about 18% in tourism and in restaurants and entertainment. Not only this, tourism sector was room occupancy about 30% or less than that during the lockdown. Now in 11 tourism destinations, we are seeing occupancy rate jumping to 85 to 90%, with cruises for the first time opening on the Red Sea. So signs are actually very positive that the economy is getting back and recovering, but we are also very cautious, and we wanted to make sure that we are not out of the woods. We wanted to be cautious and watch what is happening around the world and be prepared.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think we can only agree from our perspective here, where we had a 20% fall, that we're not quite out of the woods yet. So we're all in the same woods together, I think. Mariam, over to you for your first question.
So what has the Ministry of Finance in particular and the Saudi government in general done to support businesses and people in managing the economic challenge to the pandemic?
This is a very important question, Mariam. Thank you. Saudi Arabia started the year with actually a very strong position. We started Vision 2030 a few years before. If you look at some of the key economies around the world and their plans actually post-COVID and how they are dealing with COVID, they are actually implementing plans, including investment in infrastructure, including investment in technology, including investment in green energy. All of these are actually part of Vision 2030 that we started years before. We also reformed the government and made sure that the government is well coordinated, well informed, proactive. That came very handy when dealing with COVID-19. We started the year with a very clear plan on how we are going to deal with the pandemic. People's life were first, so we directed a lot of resources there, but also in relation to business, we put together 280 billion, north of 218 billion Saudi riyal of a package to support businesses. And that actually was very positive. SAMA, the central bank, have also provided significant liquidity into the system. They provided banks with about 70 billion of liquidity so that they can reschedule the loans to the private sector without cost. They reduced all the payment systems costs. They also injected another 50 billion of liquidity into the banking system to make sure that the banks and the financial institutions are able to provide credit to the private sector. We also very quickly empowered the National Development Fund to ensure that they have the liquidity, and they do have ample liquidity, to provide facilities to the private sector, to extend existing facilities, to suspend debt service, so that we are giving the private sector breathing space. All of this with a focus on the most hurt parts of the economy, including obviously SMEs, where we have actually directed a lot of resources to them. In addition to all of this, I think what we have done is we started looking on a daily basis at the high frequency data, analyzing the behavior of the market, behavior of the economy, behavior of the consumers, and making sure that we stand ready to extend some of these initiatives, which we did. We started for 3 months from April, we extended to July, we extended some of them to August, depending on how these businesses are performing. In addition, we started also looking at other ways of financing. And we started the first export credit agency financing in the history of Saudi Arabia this year, even during these difficult times. We started looking at the privatization, and during the lockdown, during the most difficult year, we were able actually to close 10 deals, some of them in multi-billions, with significant appetite from local and international investors. So basically, I think the response was quite balanced, making sure that we protect people's livelihood, but also preparing the economy for recovery.
Thank you, Minister. You've mentioned the Vision 2030 a number of times. And of course, one of the questions that's very much at the forefront of our minds is, whether the pandemic will affect the longer term strategic vision of the kingdom, whether, this has changed things on a longer term basis or not.
To the contrary, Richard. Actually, if you look at where we started 2020, as I mentioned earlier, we started from a point of strength thanks to Vision 2030. It actually enabled us to deal with COVID-19 very effectively and very quickly. Not only this, Vision 2030 is not only just a blueprint, it's a roadmap, and it is very effective roadmap. It helped us and it helped the Saudi people. Saudi people are embracing Vision 2030. The government is very committed, and we will continue to perform under Vision 2030. We are allocating the right resources, reallocating resources to the most impactful sectors, but we are very committed. Obviously, you will need to always and continue to adjust as you go. This is a long-term journey. This is 15 years journey. So we are adjusting as we go, but we are committed. We'll continue to do so. We are investing, but we are using also other tools that are available to us to ensure that Vision 2030 continues to be performed, and it is actually continuing.
Well, I think we might talk about some of the other tools now. Miriam, I know you've now got a couple of questions on CapEx and other things, so please go ahead.
How do you balance the capital expenditure involved in the Giga project with the need for fiscal consolidation, and how will the CapEx be financed?
Obviously, capital expenditure is very important for growth in the future, and we are committed to continue. We are very selective as part of Vision 2030 of where to invest from a government expenditure point of view and infrastructure, but also we have other tools that we are utilizing. Vision 2030 is also about diversifying the economy, empowering the private sector. That's what we are doing. And privatization, for example, is an evidence where north of 15 billion of expenditure was spared from the government's expenditure this year because the private sector is doing this. About 11 billion riyal of revenue are going to be collected this year from privatization deals that have actually been bid, and we received bids for it from private sector. But also we are utilizing the National Development Fund to ensure that the private sector has the resources to be able to finance and execute infrastructure deals. And we have the Public Investment Fund, who are focused with a mandate to invest in the local economy. They are investing a lot. And what is important is they are catalyzing investments from the private sector locally and internationally in their projects. The last deal, I think that was announced, is the air products joint venture with Aqua Power. They are investing north of $5 billion in NEOM. Contracts have been signed and awarded in NEOM to contractors in Red Sea, in Qiddiya, in Desal, in power, renewables. So we are committed. Obviously, in the government expenditure envelope, we are directing it to the most impactful, where we think the private sector cannot do it, but everything that the private sector, supported by PIF or the National Development Fund, we are leaving it to them, and we'll continue to do so.
On that note, the Kingdom is a very popular issuer in international debt markets. So what role will international capital play in your short and medium-term funding plans?
Mariam, the private sector does not have a nationality, to be honest. Local and international investors are very important for us. I could tell you in the debt market, what we have seen pre-COVID and post-COVID is very well reception. Even after COVID, in April, when we went to the international market, we received significant demand. We extended the yield curve to 40 years without cost. We received about 5 times subscription of what we really wanted to issue. And we paid a premium of 5 basis points compared to 30 to 70 basis points that our peers have paid. So the reception and the respect on the side of the international investors to the strength of the government and Saudi Arabia's credit is no doubt very strong, supported obviously by the fact that 50 countries around the world during COVID-19 have been downgraded by the rating agencies. Saudi Arabia maintained its rating with a stable outlook. On the local side, which is obviously very important for us, we are seeing significant investments. I think Ministry of Industry last week announced that during COVID, they have licensed tens of industrial projects. Some of them have already started. We utilized the impact of COVID-19 to look at the value chain. We started actually manufacturing some of the equipment that we were importing from outside, like personal protective equipment, already being manufactured in Saudi Arabia, very effectively, with high quality, with very competitive price. So actually, the momentum is quite positive. I cannot say that we are out of the woods, but the signs are actually very positive. And we think investors are looking for the right return, for the right risk, and we are providing the structural reform to ensure that we reduce the risks on investments. We do the right reforms to attract more investments.
Thank you, Minister. Well, time as ever moves on, and you've been very generous with yours. So I think we'll make this one the final question. At the very beginning of your comments, you said that you highlighted that, of course, this year, 2020, is the year of the Saudi presidency of the G20. What a year to be president of the G20. Well, what a year generally. Could you just tell us a little bit about what you are doing with the G20? What are the recent initiatives and how you're getting on the progress on the action plan that was agreed in Q2?
Richard, thank you. This is, as I said, unprecedented year, whether on the spread, severity, and even speed that the COVID-19 hit the world, exactly like a speed train. And what is really unfortunate is that the impact on low-income countries, the poor countries, and the poor people are even more than others. G20 responded and responded very swiftly. We have seen unprecedented actions taken by the G20 throughout the past several months. For the first time in the history of G20, we held the first virtual summit meeting on the first quarter with very clear mandates to the various ministerial committees and the international organizations to ensure that we protect the lives, protect people's livelihood, and prepare for recovery. With a very long list of demands from the leaders, we very quickly put this in motion. All actions are underway. Some of them have been completed. Some of them are underway. And for the first time in the history of the G20, we actually published a live document, which is the action plan, which lists each commitment by the leaders, what happened to it, has it been completed, what progress is underway. And I could name few when we started 2020, the international health organizations were screaming, possibly for the last 10 years, that there is actually a serious funding gap to prepare the world for something like COVID-19. G20 presidency, with the partners of the G20, with the EU and other international organizations, have put together in a very quick way, a plan to bridge that gap. The gap at that time was assessed to be $8 billion US. We raised 21 billion. By May, 21 billion was raised. Number two, we very quickly, and for the first time in the G20 history, we very quickly put a plan that was supported by our partners in the G20 to actually suspend debt service on poor countries, which is called the debt service suspension initiative. This was approved very quickly by the G20, implemented, and a lot of countries have already benefited from it. This is about 14 billion US, which is redirected by these countries to support their people and their health service providers. Third, for the first time in the world history, 11 trillion of stimulus package was put together, injected by the G20 into the world economy. Without it, I think we would have seen a different world. And that is not only helping the G20, but also helping the whole world. We represent 80% of the GDP of the world. The world is interconnected. We know if one country remains behind, the whole world will suffer from COVID-19. So we wanted to make sure that we cover everybody. Vaccines, therapeutics, medical equipment have been covered and financed by the G20 and other donating nations around the world. And we continue to develop that agenda, particularly when it comes to the most vulnerable, women, children, SMEs, poor countries and poor people. And if you want, I think it would be helpful for our viewers now to look at the G20.org, where it has a live document updated every day to ensure that we inform the world. Not only we talk, but we actually walk the talk when it comes to G20 and their commitment to leading the world to a better recovery. And I would like just to close, if you don't mind, Richard, please. I would say that Saudi Arabia has been and continue to be proud to host and preside over the G20. But also the people of Saudi Arabia have been very proud and have been very instrumental, not only in facing the COVID-19, listening to the healthcare officials, taking the right precautions, but also very quickly moving from actual to virtual work environment, seemingly without interruption. Nothing was interrupted in government services. Nothing was interrupted in healthcare. Nothing was interrupted in school. Very quickly, we adapted. And the people of Saudi Arabia led that charge. And that gives me a lot of hope. And I am very optimistic by nature, although cautious because of the COVID-19, but I am very optimistic that Saudi, with the talents that we have seen working hard 24 hours a day to ensure that we control COVID-19, we prepare our country for recovery, we lead the G20. This is a very proud moment, and I'm very happy, very, very happy to see this outcome.
Well, I think you've done amazing things in very difficult circumstances on both a local, regional and global stage. So our congratulations to you for that. But as ever, time is our enemy. So I think that will need to be the final question. Minister, thank you very, very much once again for joining us today. We do appreciate how busy you are. We also wish you and the Kingdom the very best for the remainder of the year. We trust that the worst of the pandemic is behind us and look forward to seeing the results of your hard work in Q3 and Q4.
Thank you very much.
Mariam, thank you too for your time and for your questions. So I am now going to hand over to my future self for the next part of the show, expert analysis and Q&A. Don't go away. We'll be right back.